8 kids average daily population and keeping the fair viable, I can tell you right now what my choice is going to be. And that is the big picture. And that's why delving into all these little nuances is important, because as we sort out that, it hopefully can give us that perspective. I mean, that's just one. Do I want to take $2.5 million of the property tax revenue that will be generated by the payment of the Dyer tax and invest it in the teeter money with the hopes of making 50% on our interest, like we've done with the money sitting there, the million that we're going to get, the one time only on the penalties and interest? Yeah, that's a great bargain. I mean, that's a huge, let's take all the general fund and put it into the teeter thing, and then we can generate tens of millions of dollars, but we have no program. And the issue is, we're here to provide a program, not to generate these exorbitant, revenues from, investments. So to me, the fact that we're having these discussions over fireworks is ludicrous, because we've got enough money to blow up the whole state if you want to know, if we take it and apply it. And so to me, Jim, I'm saying is I'm willing to give you that other $27,000. Let's take out the 98 and we'll find it. We'll find it. And that's what we're going to do before the week's over with. And we'll maybe build 2 swimming pools, one for the bad kids and one for the good kids. I was only going to build one for the good kids, but it looks like we're going to have enough money to build them for both.
I just want to say one other thing too, is just, I've looked into pretty much everything, and I even looked into our garbage. And we saved $4,800 by me doing 2 little things, allowing them to bring their big truck in, and they parked it there. And I pulled out before I left at night. I pulled out all the garbage cans so they can just pack them up and go. And we saved $4,800 over last year, just in garbage. So I'm trying to find every nook and cranny I can to save.
Well,
and absolutely done all that.
thank you for what you do, Jim.
Yep.
And keep doing it, and we'll find the money to
I
make
know
it.
when I call you on Saturdays and Sundays on your cell phone, I know exactly where you are. You're down at the fairgrounds doing something.
Well,
Your dedication.
it's getting on my close time not to do too much, so that's good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you guys, I appreciate it. Thank you for staff, and
Thanks, Jim.
Marty, thank you for your staff's help.
Okay, we're gonna go to Mr. Anderson then.
What was the conclusion on the $9,800?
We'd like to drop the $9,800 out of the budget for the time being, realizing if it does come up again, we may have to augment.
If they show up and make a demand for it, and they've got monies that we're going to gain from it, if they're going to give us $50,000 in new revenue, I'll spend $9,800
There's a
to do
performance
the
audit in his budget that he may not have to do, and so consequently, he's got it budgeted in there. And we're gonna take
Yeah, I'd
that out
take
because we
it
won't
out.
have to do it this year, so.
Right.
Okay, we will cover you, Lori, on that. For Mr. Egan and the esteemed assessor, yes.
I didn't hit one thing, I'm sorry.
Okay.
We do have that 183 fund, which is
Yeah.
our capital improvement.
Right.
We've got roughly 212,000, Karen. And I've got that slated to use $18,000 of that this year for an asphalt wear on the midway, which the county's gonna help us do. And, we do have that money, if we wanna use that money to help cover. Now, some of that money, and I'd have to go back, Karen, I'm not sure, some was given by you gentlemen, some was from the sale of the property, and then also we have the money that came in from the fire too. And I'm not sure how much of these we have left.
$147,683. And, that's
Is which
exactly
one?
what the balance is. It was from
There's room for
the proceeds of property sale
Right.
that the board designated to the fair. And then it was the excess insurance from the fire.
Correct.
Right.
So that's but it is like 214, something like that.
No, it's
It's
147.
147.
after your expenditures, it's $132,879 right now.
Right.
$132,000.
Okay. So that's available. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Mr. Anderson, we're gonna do Ken, we're gonna do Maury first, just because of the planning commission issue and so on, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Thank you.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the
Ted.
board.
7, yep.
Mr. Anderson, good morning.
Good morning.
I know you have two shirts, one for yesterday.
Kirsten, Nathan, you can
Thanks, Nick.
thank Kirsten, she knows where I'll be.
We all make our eyes for.
I thought he slept in it, and all those lines on there are the wrinkles that he created.
No, but my tie I just loosened and take off over my head, so I have to tie it again.
Thank you.
Warren, do you have another copy of that?
I do. Sorry.
I didn't get a copy.
Thanks.
I didn't say it. Again, good morning. I'd like to start off by acknowledging the Budget Committee and the work that they did. I attended all budget meetings, and I thought it was useful and beneficial, and I hope that somehow translated into what you guys are looking at today. I had the dubious responsibility of coming to the board during tough budget time with many budgets that are primarily driven by the general fund and revenues that don't nearly come close to matching this. So I want to just briefly go over some history. As a response in response to the economy, essentially, in 2008, 2009, we laid off essentially half of both departments, planning and building. And that was pretty devastating because even though you may not be getting the single-family residences that you used to, a lot of our responsibilities don't change. And that said, we persevered, we got through that, and we've been a lean and mean machine ever since. And that's a function of engineering, really. I've been focused on customer service and systems and processes, and I think that that's resulted in a very efficient department that is relevant and most of all responsive to the citizens. That said, the engineering is required, to keep putting the fingers in the dam, and there's not enough fingers, and so we have to crisis manage the department in a way. So what I'm keen on doing is making sure the phone's not ringing for you guys and for Marty, and trying to manage those things and those issues that present themselves as a response of a lack of staff and lack of training. But we've reached sort of a critical situation, especially in the building department. The good news is we've got three great staffers. The challenging news is they are in need of significant and substantial training. Really what we have is a situation where we've deferred maintenance on that department to the point where it reached critical mass, exploded, and we have inured many liabilities as a result of that inattention. So when we go over the building budget, I want you just to remember what I said. We really need to, I want to impress upon you the necessity for the building official and our inspector to be ready to go, prepared for the 2013 code change that happens in January, as well as our building official has to have the credentials to make our liability reasonable. So there are some costs associated with that that are a departure from previous budgets. Getting back to the paradigm, the function of the department, another change is that I'm requesting and have talked with the Budget Committee and extensively about changing the chief planner to an assistant director position, which was abolished some years back. The reason for this is plainly that, from 15 to 25 people, I need assistance in managing that many people. We're in a position right now, luckily, that we have the right folks who can step into those shoes. It's a critical necessity in my estimation. I'm frequently at admin, at training, not in the office, and things happen fast around the planning department, and there has to be somebody that can make decisions at the snap of the finger, and that person is in this room. I want to go over the different budget items. I know we have an hour before noon. Is there anyone that you want to start with, or should I just start going through them?
So we'll go through the order, but.
Well, my book is my mess, and so I'm not looking at yours, but I'll just start with the surveyor. The surveyor function, as you know,
It's the front, first page.
The
Tab
first
7.
tab,
What's the budget?
2100, 331.
just a general overview. We've been through a lot of different surveyors. We've hired a lot of different consultants. We've tried it in-house. It's been an arduous, bumpy road. I remember, it seems like yesterday, that I was in here every Tuesday with something to do with TAC or with surveying. Recognize that I haven't been. Recognize that we've addressed that situation and are functioning quite well. I want to just briefly describe what our newest surveyor, Malcolm McDonald, has done since he came along in September, and that's 10 record of surveys, 3 parcel maps, 18 corner records, 120 legal parcel determinations, a merger, and has basically overhauled the address system in the 911 program. He's been instrumental in helping us with the Hurlong disposal, and is responsible for a number of different things such as monitoring the lake. So he's been quite busy. That's the good news. The bad news is that the fees for those things haven't been adjusted since 1983. So, you know, he does a lot of stuff that really isn't, there's no revenue coming in, but he provides, you know, a massive amount of service. And so that's something, you know, and I want to impress upon the board that, you know, I'm recommending that in the coming year that we do look at fees, both for the planning and surveying department. The building fees are generally up to date, but it might be worth comparing some other counties. But both the survey and the planning department are over 20 years old in terms of being updated. So I know it's not a silver bullet for revenue, but I think it's part of the package. In short, the budget, that line item, that budget category does not pay for itself. The revenue that came in was approximately $9,000 from survey fees. And you're looking at $84,000 in revenue and expenditures.
So then that's about triple that it was last year, is that because of the he's doing so?
We didn't have a surveyor for a lot of the year. We didn't have any survey function. What I can tell you is, in terms of hiring it out, it isn't cost effective. That's the running theme for anything that you try to, you know, contract out. You have usually it doesn't pan out financially, but most of all, the service and the knowledge and the skill isn't going to be what you want because they're not local.
Right.
We tried it, it failed. We tried it 3 times. It
So
failed.
it shows here 89,498 is the recommended budget, and your income is 9,000 to cover that.
That's right. Any questions on survey?
I got one question on the survey. Just from last year to the department request on the salary, that's because he was just paid part-time previous year, and he's gonna be full-time this
He
year.
started in September.
Okay.
And then, as I said, there was a large gap in between hiring him and just there was nothing happening. So that's why there's such a difference in the year before.
Well, just to make sure, so Marty, you obviously have that in order to agendize the fees, survey, planning fees. Is that like kinda as a result of that?
If that's part of the direction it comes out of
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that, because like a lot of stuff gets said, it's a good idea, then it gets forgotten about, so is that basically the direction?
And that only doesn't pertain to Maureen's department, there's other ones.
No, I've been talking with the recorder's office, the sheriff's department, there are a number
No,
of
you're right, no, you're
department
right.
heads
We
that
do not want to let that
Keep a
go.
list going.
But the amount, and I don't have that number, the amount of a fee increase to the surveyors would be extremely insignificant to these numbers.
well, it's not insignificant to me.
Well, I mean, how much you talking?
Well-
We're talking about a $90,000, $80,000 shortfall, and how many, what's your fee?
The surveyor function will not pay for itself.
Never, no.
Never.
Yeah, but I
You're
mean,
getting
an
10%
increase in the fees of the surveyor is not gonna even come close to correcting, maybe 1% of the problem, 2%?
Maybe.
That's what I'm saying, that's insignificant in my mind.
It is, but for me, in going through these budget hearings, it's not, it's gonna take several different things to get from A to B.
There's no silver bullet.
There's no silver bullet. Now,
In the entire
in
category.
planning, which I want to discuss next, I think that it could make a significant impact. We've just recently, Malcolm surveyed other departments in other jurisdictions, and, like, we charge $175 for a lot line adjustment. That doesn't come close, and you can look and see throughout the Northern California, $1,000 is more like what it costs. And so that's substantial. I mean, when you look at the amount of projects that we do, that would add up. I mean, it's not going to make us cost neutral. And when we do a fee study, we could, the challenge will be you look at what would be cost neutral, what would pay for itself, and then going down the percentage list is how much do you really want it to be fully sufficient? Do you want to have it funded by the developer at 80%, 50%, 40%? Those are the things that we will need to wrestle with when that time comes. So moving on to planning, it's a great team, and they do a lot. Galen has been instrumental in getting us through a challenging situation with the building department. We're still figuring things out, but we are on a great road to success. And this isn't in your material before you, we have successfully secured a grant application for another groundwater monitoring grant. This represents, I think, the 5th. I had a couple some years ago, and Galen's, I think, on his 2nd or 3rd one. It's $140,000. And the good news about this grant is we've worked with DWR, and we've proposed to do it in-house. And so we are going to have that revenue come in, and we are going to go ahead and have our staff do it. And so that's revenue that isn't indicated before you. And this is going back to groundwater monitoring. It's another unfunded mandate threat by the state that if we don't do our own groundwater management, they'll do it for us, and the board has made very clear that we don't want to relinquish control over those categories: water, mining, etc. So that's good news. $140,000 and change. Thomas continues to be in charge of mining. We have a new employee that is going to be the inspector, who is the inspector, and he's just doing a phenomenal job. And the good news with that is primarily funded by the operators. And so our revenue in that area is over $70,000 for the last fiscal year. And it's a timing thing when we do inspections and when people pay and when we nag them to pay, but we are doing much better in terms of getting people to pay on time, and that's represented by the revenue that came in for the mining division. So,
Can I-
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that 140 that is gonna be coming in, so you said that's not.
it's not in front of you right now.
So, what,
We just recently negotiated with DWR to do that in-house.
so that's coming in, I'm sorry, you probably said it, that's the when, like this.
This fiscal year.
How come it's not included in there?
Because we proposed it and they didn't answer us until recently.
Just a timing issue.
Yeah, timing issue.
So it's a known thing at this point,
Yeah, we have a letter, yeah, sure.
so we get out of revenue?
Add a revenue. I love saying that. Sure.
That's, yeah, that's,
That's a whopper.
that's a whopper, yeah.
Good job
Why you keep-
planning.
Why you keeping it a secret?
What was the dollar amount? 140?
It's 140 something.
What are you adding?
What's the account number?
The account number would be 100-0681-2006200.
Under the state groundwater grant?
Correct.
Yeah, it's blank right now, so you're adding 140,000 there?
Even?
No, he's
I'll
making
tell
out.
him momentarily.
So while Galen's doing that, I want to kind of do an overview of, largely what we do, even when we increase our fees, as Supervisor Powell points out, we're not going to achieve that cost neutral. But there are so many functions, especially in planning, that there are no revenues. It's just what we do. For example, Thomas answers the phone and responds to zoning, flood, general plan, information requests all the times. There's all kinds of public records requests. And he averages over 3,000 calls a year. Those calls are not simply pick up the phone, talk, and put it down. They require research, sometimes extensive research, which is all unaccounted for in terms of revenue. As well, that goes for everybody, from myself down to Kelly, who answers the building department calls. Again, she averages well over 3,000 calls a year. And as I said, all those calls normally require research, and so there's no revenue coming in for that kind of time spent, and that's significant. And when you look at the planning department, from water issues to sage-grouse to you name it, those are some of the lion's share components of what we do, which we're supposed to do, which we want to do, but they're not, seen in the budget. So I just feel like pointing that out. And I'm going to talk about code enforcement and planning because
Before you do,
Yeah.
going back to your planning page, this is your 100-681 budget. You've kind of been bouncing around.
okay.
And and I'm looking at the salaries and wages as well as some of the related insurance. Because I'm trying to understand how we jumped $132,000 is the bottom line in terms of where we spent last year and what you're proposing to spend this year. And that's after you had about a $50,000 cut from what was requested. So the CAO dialed back your departmental requests. But in terms of looking at the salary line, you're adding, your FTE stayed the same across the bottom. I mean, you had 6.6 back in position back in 10-11, and then in 11-12 it dropped to 5.7, and that stayed static. So I mean, you've been describing what all the people are doing, and that's just for this division. You have more when you add all the other divisions. We're just dealing with this particular division. But you have a $72,000 increase in the salary line item. Now, that's partly probably offset PERS, employer paid PERS, and we've made that change where that you dropped 12,000 there. So that kind of indicates about a $60,000 increase in salary. So what happened? What drove that?
There are a couple of things happening. One is that there were some longevity increases, and those are substantial. But what's not reflected in that budget is in building and planning both, the salary increases are not exactly accurate because, especially in building, because we don't have the building official that represented in that budget. So that's substantially different. I don't know if you have anything to.
Well, you have 50,000 increase in building. I was focusing on planning,
So the planning is there's several, or not several, there's a few longevity increases. I'm recommending that there be an assistant director position, which would initially be probably 3,000 to 4,000. And what wasn't represented, what is an additional cost is a technician position that was filled. So those are the categories that have represented the increase. And in terms of services, which you'll see another jump as well.
Because you have an $8,000 increase in your retirement amount, which would obviously tie to the employer side of it in terms of the salary increases, and then the cafeteria plan jumped up about $20,000 with all of the 5 positions. So.
But again, you had one of the top positions was at the end of the range with all the longevity. And that's represented in what you're looking at, and that is no longer the case. So
For planning?
Well, partly planning. That's planning and building. So, you know, I mean, those longevity increases are significant. And I don't know what to say other than they are what.
Weren't there a lot of salary savings last year?
Yeah, I mean, I imposed a hiring freeze on myself, and I still have vacant positions. And you have to, you know, I want to represent it like we lost half our staff, and that was a decrease. That's great. But, you know, there was a response to that, and you slowly try to figure out where you're going to start filling those holes that are necessary. And that's represented in this. I've got, I think, 2 or 3 vacant positions, and you know, I try to maximize the time that they're vacant until it reaches a crisis situation, and then I fill them. Sort of like, as I said.
So how many vacant positions do you have out of the 5.7?
In planning?
In planning.
I think 1.
Okay.
Is it 1 or 2?
Because I mean, in 10, 11, you go from 237. In 11, 12, you're doing 192, so obviously there's some vacancy there. That would indicate that would be true. And then you're back up to 227 again, and then you jump to 299. That's what I'm saying.
We hired a technician.
You know, looking at the history there, you're kind of going like that, which would account for cost savings and stuff from vacancies, because every department's going to have that. I mean, that's given, and so that's normal. Then all of a sudden like that, and I'm just trying to get a handle on what that 6 is.
1 new position. No, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong,
1 new
Christina,
position or 1 filled position?
what we did was, I believe we had 2 vacant planning positions, like associate planner and a senior level.
Correct.
And we took the associate level and made it into a technician and filled the technician position. So that accounts for 1 FTE right there.
So you still have, I mean, your FTEs have stayed the same, but you're just filling, so you're basically now 1 vacancy, but you had 2 because you filled the
Right,
technician.
right. But we lowered the position to a technician
I'm just
level.
going to circle that to say this reflects 2 vacant positions.
That are not budgeted.
No, these are budgeted. I mean, well, they were just not filled,
Not
and so
filled.
they weren't budgeted, so you're putting the budget back in. Because you got 5.7 is your allocation across